Write the following numbers in order of size. Start with the smallest number. So in order to arrange these in size order, we're going to want to look at the first digit after the decimal point. So for the first number this is 4, for the second number this is 0, for the third number this is 3, for the fourth number this is 1, and for the fifth number this is 2. So therefore, because 0.02 has a 0 following the decimal point, and all of the other four numbers have numbers above 0 after the decimal point, this makes 0.02 the smallest number. The second smallest number is 0.152, and this is because the number following the decimal point is a 1. The number following the decimal point in 0.2 is a 2, so this is the next smallest number. The number following the decimal point in 0.37 is 3, making this the fourth smallest number, and then the only remaining number is 0.4. And this is our final answer. And this question's worth 1 mark, and we'll get this for the correct answer. Write 0.6 as a percentage. So in order to go from a decimal to a percentage, we need to multiply the decimal by 100. So therefore, to turn 0.6 into a percentage, we'll need to multiply 0.6 by 100. And this gives us an answer of 60%. And this question's worth 1 mark, and this is for the correct answer. Here is a list of numbers: 3, 5, 7, 12, 15, 18, 20. From the list, write down a factor of 10. So a factor is a number which we can divide exactly to give another number. So if we want a factor of 10, we want a number which we can divide 10 by to give a whole number. So what we can do is go through this list and see which of these will give us a whole number. So 10 divided by 3 will give us 10 over 3. 10 divided by 5 will give us 2. 10 divided by 7 will give us 10 divided by 7. 10 divided by 12 will give us 10 over 12. 10 divided by 15 will give us 10 over 15. 10 divided by 18 will give us 10 over 18. And then 10 divided by 20 will give us 10 over 20. So what we can see, the only number which we can divide 10 by to give us a whole number is 5. So therefore, the only factor of 10 from this list is 5. And this is our final answer. And this question's worth 1 mark, and this is for the correct answer. Write 7,829 to the nearest 1,000. So if we're rounding this number to the nearest 1,000, we're going to want to look at the hundreds digit. And if the hundreds digit is less than 5, then we'll round down. However, if the hundreds digit is greater than 5, then we round up. And because 8 is greater than 5, we're going to round this number up. Because 7,829 is closer to 8,000 than it is 7,000. And this is our final answer. And this question's worth 1 mark, and this is for the correct answer. Work out 3 multiplied by 5 plus 7. So an important thing to remember for this question is our BIDMAS rules. So we'll always do multiplication before addition. So we can start off with 3 multiplied by 5, and this gives us 15, and then we can add on the 7. So 15 adds 7 is equal to 22. And this is our final answer. And this question's worth 1 mark, and we'll get this for the correct answer. Work out 2 to the power of 3. So 2 to the power of 3 is the equivalent of writing 2 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 2. So to make it easier, we can do this in 2 separate steps. We can start by doing the first 2 multiplied by 2, and then we can multiply this answer by 2. So 2 multiplied by 2 is 4, and then multiplied by 2. And then 4 multiplied by 2 gives us 8. And this is our final answer. And this question's worth 1 mark, and this is for the correct answer. Write brackets in this statement to make it correct. 7 multiplied by 2 plus 3 is equal to 35. So as before, we'll need to remember our BIDMAS rules. So at the moment, 7 multiplied by 2 plus 3 gives us an answer of 17, because we'll always do our multiplication before the addition. However, when we write in brackets, this means whatever is inside the brackets will be done before the multiplication. And if the number which we're multiplying the brackets by will be 7, 7 multiplied by 5 gives us 35. So therefore, in order to make this statement correct, we can put brackets around the 2 plus 3, and this means we'll do the 2 plus 3 equals 5 before we'll multiply it by 7. And this question's worth 1 mark, and this is for the correct answer. Sue has 2 cats. Each cat eats a quarter of a tin of cat food each day. Sue buys 8 tins of cat food. Has Sue bought enough cat food to feed her 2 cats for 14 days? You must show how you get your answer. So the first thing we can work out for this question is how many tins of cat food 2 cats will eat each day. So if 1 cat will eat a quarter of a tin of cat food each day, and Sue has 2 cats, then if we multiply a quarter by 2, this will tell us how many tins of cat food her 2 cats will eat in 1 day. And 2 multiplied by 1 over 4 is equal to 2 over 4, which is equal to a half. So therefore, 2 cats will eat half a tin of cat food per day between them. So if Sue wants to know if she's bought enough cat food for 14 days, based on the fact her cats will eat half a tin of cat food between them per day, then if we multiply a half by 14, this will tell us how many tins her cats will need for 14 days. And a half multiplied by 14 gives us an answer of 7. So therefore, Sue will need 7 tins to feed her cat for 14 days. Now in the question we've been told that Sue buys 8 tins of cat food. So therefore, because only 7 will be needed to feed them for 14 days, Sue has bought enough tins of cat food. So now the final thing we need to do for this question is write a summary statement. So we can write something along the lines of, yes, Sue has bought enough cat food because she needs 7 tins to feed her cat for 14 days, but she has bought 8 tins. Now this question's worth 2 marks. We'll get our first mark for working out how many tins of cat food her 2 cats will eat in 1 day. We'll get our second mark for working out how many tins of cat food will be needed to feed her 2 cats for 14 days. And we'll get our third mark for our final summary statement, stating that yes, Sue has bought enough cat food, along with the supporting calculations. There are only apple trees, cherry trees, pear trees and plum trees in an orchard. The pictogram shows information about the number of apple trees, cherry trees and pear trees in the orchard. There is a total of 30 trees in the orchard. Complete the pictogram. So in the pictogram we've been given a key. And this is that one large square represents 4 trees. And we've been told in the question that this pictogram already shows the information about the number of apple, cherry and pear trees. So we'll only need to fill in the plum trees. So the first thing we can do is count up how many apple, cherry and pear trees there are. And if one large square represents 4 trees, and there are 3 large squares in the apple row, each representing 4 trees, then this means in total there are 12 apple trees. There is one large square in the cherry tree row, which represents 4, and there is this smaller square. Now this smaller square is a quarter of the size of one of the larger squares, and because one of the larger squares represents 4 trees, then this means a square which is a quarter of the size will represent 1 tree. And if we add these together, this tells us that there are 5 cherry trees. In the pear row, we again have another large square, which represents 4 trees. And then we have this rectangle here. Now this rectangle is half the size of this larger square. And if the larger square represents 4 trees, then this means this rectangle will represent half the number of trees, which is 2. And again, if we add these together, 4 add 2 gives us 6 pear trees. So now we can add these 3 values together to work out how many apple, cherry and pear trees there are in total. And 12 plus 5 plus 6 is 23. Now in this question we've been told that there are 30 trees in the orchard. And if we worked out that there are 23 apple, cherry and pear trees, then this means the number of plum trees will be 30 minus 23. And 30 minus 23 is 7. So therefore the number of plum trees is 7. So now we can start filling this into the pictogram. So if one larger square represents 4 trees, and 7 is greater than 4, then to start off, we can add one of the larger squares into the plum row. And if this represents 4 trees, and we want to represent 7 trees in total, then this means we have a remaining 3 trees to represent in this row. And if a larger square represents 4 trees, and we need to represent 3, then we can use a shape which is 3/4 of the size of this larger square. So we can draw in a shape which looks like this. And this now represents 7 plum trees. Now this question's worth 3 marks. We'll get 1 mark for working out the total number of trees which are already represented in this pictogram. We'll get our 2nd mark for minusing this number from 30 to work out the number of plum trees. And we'll get our 3rd mark for correctly completing this pictogram. Write down the coordinates of point A. So coordinates are represented by the x coordinate first, and then the y coordinate second. So in order to work out the first value, we can read the number off the x-axis, which is this horizontal axis here. And the value of point A on the x-axis is -2. So this is our x-coordinate. And the value for our y-coordinate is the value of point A when we read off the y-axis, which is -1. And this is our final answer. And this question's worth 1 mark, and this is for having both the correct coordinates. On the grid, mark with a cross the point 2, 3. Label this point B. So as before, the x-coordinate is represented by the first number, and the y coordinate is represented by the second number. So therefore, for the coordinate 2, 3, we're going to want to go 2 along on the x-axis and 3 up on the y-axis. And if we do this, this gives us that point B is here. And this question's worth 1 mark, and this is for placing point B in the correct spot. On the grid, draw the line with the equation x equals -4. So the line with the equation x equals -4 is the line in which every value of x is -4. And the only line which we can draw so that all values of x will be -4 will be this line here. And as we can see, no matter what the y value is, x is always equal to -4. And this question's worth 1 mark, and this is for the correct line. G equals 9, h equals 4, work out the value of 2g plus 3h. So for this question, we're going to want to substitute the values of both g and h into this expression. So if we start off with 2g, if g is equal to 9, then this means 2g will be equal to 2 multiplied by 9. And then we can use the same process for 3h. So if h is equal to 4, then 3h will be equal to 3 multiplied by 4. So now what we can do is simplify this down. And for this we'll need to remember our BIDMAS rules. So we'll always do our multiplication before our addition. So 2 multiplied by 9 is 18. And then 3 multiplied by 4 is 12. And now the final thing we need to do is 18 plus 12, which gives us an answer of 30. And this is our final answer. Now this question's worth 2 marks. We'll get our first mark for substituting in the values of both g and h into the expression, and we'll get our second mark for the correct answer. Write down 2 prime numbers that have a sum of 32. So 2 numbers which have a sum of 32 are 2 numbers which we can add together to give us 32. Now we want 2 prime numbers which we can add together to give us 32. And a prime number is a number which is only divisible by itself and 1. So we can start off this question by writing down all of the prime numbers between 1 and 32. Now this is a list of all of the prime numbers between 1 and 32. So now what we can do is try different combinations of these numbers and see if they add up to 32. So if we start with 2, there is no number in this list which we can add to 2 which would give us 32. So we can therefore cross this out. Next we can move on to 3. Now 3 add 29 gives us a value of 32. So this is one possible combination which we could use in our answer. Next 5. There is no number in this list which we could add to 5 to give us 32. So we can therefore cross this one out too. 7 can also not be added to another prime number to give us 32. 11 cannot be added to a prime number to give us 32. However, 13 add 19 gives us an answer of 32. And there are no other possible combinations of prime numbers which will sum to 32. So therefore there are 2 possible answers which we can give for this question, 3 and 29 or 13 and 19. Either of these answers will get you both marks. And this question's worth 2 marks, and we'll get both of these for stating two prime numbers which will add together to give us 32. Here are some fractions. One of these fractions is not equivalent to 3/4. Which fraction? So if any of these fractions are equivalent to 3/4, we should be able to simplify it down to 3/4. So essentially for this question we're going to want to simplify down each of these fractions to their simplest form and find out which one is not equal to 3/4. So if we start off with 9/12, if we divide both the numerator and the denominator by 3, this gives us an answer of 3/4. So therefore 9/12 is equivalent to 3/4. Next, 6/8. If we divide both the numerator and the denominator by 2, this also gives us an answer of 3/4. So therefore 6/8 is also equivalent to 3/4. If we divide both the numerator and the denominator by 6 in 18/24, this also gives us an answer of 3/4. If we divide both the numerator and the denominator by 5 in 15/20, this gives us a fraction of 3/4. However, the only way we can simplify 10/16 is by dividing both the numerator and the denominator by 2. And this gives us an answer of 5/8. So therefore, the only fraction which is not equivalent to 3/4 is the fraction 10/16. And this is our final answer. Now this question's worth 1 mark, and we'll get this for the correct answer. Work out 1/12 plus 5/6. So when adding together fractions, we need to have a common denominator, which is the bottom number on the fraction. So we want to find a common multiple of both 12 and 6. And a number we can use is the number 12. So we can keep the fraction 1/12 the same. However, what we're going to want to do with 5/6 is multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 2. And this gives us a fraction of 10/12. Now both of these fractions are equal because we double both the numerator and the denominator. And now what we can do is add together these two fractions. And when adding fractions, we add together the numerators and we keep the denominator the same. So therefore our final answer is 11/12. And this question's worth 2 marks. We'll get our first mark for finding a common denominator for both of these fractions. And we'll get our second mark for the correct answer. Tom uses his lorry to deliver bricks. You can use this graph to find the delivery cost for different distances. For each delivery there's a fixed charge plus a charge for the distance. How much is the fixed charge? So a fixed charge is a price which you have to pay no matter what distance you're travelling. So it's the price that anybody will pay before the price for the distance travelled is added. So in order to work out what the fixed charge is, we'll need to look on this graph and we're going to want to look at where the distance is equal to 0, which is here. Now this is because when someone has travelled 0 miles, there will be no extra charge for the distance travelled. So therefore the fixed charge is the price when distance is equal to 0, which is here. And if we read off the graph, this gives us a fixed charge of £10. And this question's worth 1 mark, and this is for the correct answer. Tom makes 2 deliveries of bricks. The distance of one delivery is 20 miles more than the distance of the other delivery. Work out the difference between the 2 delivery costs. So for this question, we can choose 2 different distances, each 20 miles apart, and then work out the difference between these two prices. So we can choose the distance 0 and then the distance 20. And if we read off the graph, this tells us that at 20 miles the delivery cost is £40 and at 0 miles the delivery cost is £10. So now the final thing we need to do is work out the difference between these two prices. And 40 minus 10 gives us an answer of £30. And this is our final answer. Now this question's worth 2 marks. We'll get our first mark for correctly reading off the graph, and we'll get our second mark for the correct answer. Asmol, Ryan and Kim each played a game. Asmol's score was 4 times Ryan's score. Kim's score was half of Asmol's score. Write down the ratio of Asmol's score to Ryan's score to Kim's score. So the first thing we can do is write down this ratio in a more visual form. So we want the ratio of Asmol's score to Ryan's score to Kim's score. And it's important that we put these ratios in the correct order. So now the next thing we can do is let x be equal to Ryan's score. So this means that r is equal to x. We've been told in the question that Asmol's score was 4 times Ryan's score. And if Ryan's score was x, then this means Asmol's score is 4x. We've then been told that Kim's score was half of Asmol's score. And we worked out that A is equal to 4x. So therefore Kim's score is equal to a half multiplied by 4x, which means that Kim's score is equal to 2x. So now what we can do is substitute in these scores in terms of x into this ratio above. So we worked out that Asmol's score was 4x. We worked out that Ryan's score was x. And we worked out that Kim's score was 2x. Now each of these 3 ratios contain an x term, so what we can do is divide all 3 of these numbers by x. And this gives us a final ratio of 4 to 1 to 2. And this is our final answer. Now this question's worth 2 marks. We'll get our first mark for expressing the scores in terms of x. And we'll get our second mark for the correct ratio. The diagram shows quadrilateral ABCD with each of the sides extended. AB equals AD. Show that ABCD is a kite. Give a reason for each stage of your working. So in order to prove that this quadrilateral is a kite, we need to show that 2 side lengths are the same and 2 of the angles are the same. Now we've already been told in the question that side AB and AD are equal. So therefore, we'll need to prove that 2 of these angles are equal to each other. So we can start working out some of these internal angles. So we can start with angle BCD. So opposite angles are always equal in size. So these 2 angles are vertically opposite to each other, and vertically opposite angles are equal in size. So therefore angle BCD is 50 degrees. And an important thing to remember for this question is we need to give a reason for each stage of our working. And our reasoning for this is because vertically opposite angles are equal in size. So we can fill this into our diagram. So now the next angle we can work out is angle ADC. Now this line here is a straight line, and angles on a straight line add up to 180 degrees. So therefore, if this angle is 75 degrees, then angle ADC will be equal to 180 minus 75 degrees, which is 105 degrees. And again we need to give a reason for this. And our reason for this is because angles on a straight line add up to 180 degrees. So again, we can fill this into our diagram. So now we have 3 out of 4 angles in this quadrilateral. And in order to work out the final angle, angle ABC, we can use the rule that angles in a quadrilateral add up to 360 degrees. So this means that angle ABC plus 100 degrees plus 105 degrees plus 50 degrees is equal to 360 degrees. And when we simplify this down, this tells us that angle ABC is equal to 105 degrees. And our reasoning for this is because angles in a quadrilateral add up to 360 degrees. So again, we can fill in angle ABC on our diagram. So now what we can see is within this shape, we have 2 equal angles and 2 equal side lengths. So therefore, quadrilateral ABCD is a kite. So now the final thing we can do is write a summary statement. And we can write something along the lines of ABCD is a kite because it has 2 equal side lengths and 2 equal angles. Now this question's worth 4 marks. We'll get 1 mark for working out angle BCD. We'll get 1 mark for working out angle ADC. We'll get 1 mark for working out angle ABC. And we'll get 1 mark for the correct reasoning to back up our answers. Shahid is going to use these instructions to make a fizzy drink. Mix 5 parts of orange juice with 2 parts of lemonade. Shahid thinks he has 300 millilitres of orange juice and 200 millilitres of lemonade. If Shahid is correct, what is the greatest amount of fizzy drink he can make? So the first thing we're going to want to work out is which of these drinks is going to be the limiting factor when making the fizzy drink. So we can do this by working out how many millilitres of each drink we'll have per part based on the amount of drinks Shahid thinks he has. So if we start off with orange juice, we've been told that Shahid has 300 millilitres of orange juice. So if we do 300 divided by 5, this tells us how many millilitres each part would be equal to based on the amount of orange juice Shahid has. So 300 divided by 5 is 60 millilitres per part of orange juice. Next we can work out the lemonade. So Shahid has 200 millilitres of lemonade and only 2 parts are required for the fizzy drink. So if we do 200 divided by 2, so this means that 100 millilitres would be needed per part of lemonade based on the amount of lemonade Shahid has. So what we can see is the limiting factor based on the amount of drinks that Shahid has will be the orange juice. Because if we wanted to mix 5 parts of orange juice with 2 parts of lemonade based on the 100 millilitres, we would run out of orange juice. So therefore, the value we'll want to use per part will be 60 millilitres. So now what we can do is work out the volume of orange juice and the volume of lemonade that will be required. So if 1 part of orange juice is equal to 60 millilitres, then this means that 5 parts will be equal to 60 millilitres multiplied by 5, which gives us 300 millilitres. And next we can work out the amount of lemonade which will be required. So based on 1 part being equal to 60 millilitres, if we want 2 parts of lemonade, this will be equal to 60 multiplied by 2, which gives us 120 millilitres. So now if 300 millilitres of orange juice will be needed and 120 millilitres of lemonade will be needed, then the final thing we'll need to do for this question is add together these two values to work out the greatest amount of fizzy drink he can make. And 300 add 120 gives us 420 millilitres. And this is our final answer. Now this question's worth 3 marks. We'll get our first mark for working out how many millilitres each part of the drink is equal to. We'll get our second mark for working out the amount of each individual drink. And we'll get our third mark for adding these two values together to work out the total amount of fizzy drink in order to get a final answer. Shahid has 300 millilitres of orange juice, but he only has 160 millilitres of lemonade. Does this affect the greatest amount of fizzy drink he can make? Give a reason for your answer. So we worked out in part A of this question that the limiting factor for this drink was the orange juice, and 300 millilitres of orange juice was required to make 420 millilitres of the fizzy drink. However, only 120 millilitres of lemonade was required to make the 420 millilitres of drink. So therefore, even though Shahid has 160 millilitres of lemonade, only 120 are required. So therefore, the greatest amount of fizzy drink he can make will not be affected. So now the final thing we need to do is state that this does not affect the greatest amount of fizzy drink he can make, along with the reason. So we can write something along the lines of, no, because only 120 millilitres of lemonade is required to make 420 millilitres of the fizzy drink. And this question's worth 1 mark, and this is for the correct answer, along with a suitable reason. Here are 2 rectangles. Jim says the 2 rectangles are similar because 8 plus 4 is equal to 12 and 6 plus 4 equals 10. Is Jim correct? Explain your answer. So in order for 2 rectangles to be similar, each side length must be a multiple of the corresponding side length on the other shape. However, Jim has added 4 to each side length rather than multiplied each side length. So therefore, Jim is not correct because he has added the number to the side lengths rather than multiplied them. So now in order to get the mark for this question, we need to state whether Jim is correct and then give a reason for our answer. So we can write something along the lines of, no, because Jim has added the number to the side lengths rather than multiplied the number. And this question's worth 1 mark, and this is for a suitable statement with the correct reasonings. "80 people are asked if they like coffee. 48 of these people are women, 61 of the 80 people like coffee, 8 of the men do not like coffee. Use this information to complete the frequency tree." So in this frequency tree, the total number of people is already filled in, which is 80. So now what we're going to want to do for this question is use the information we've been given to begin to fill out this frequency tree. So if we start off with the information that 48 of these people are women, so if 48 of these people are women, we're going to want to look at this women row here. And we can fill this in with 48. So now from this information, if there are 80 people in total, and 48 of these 80 people are women, then this means that the number of men is equal to 80 minus 48, which is 32. So now we can fill this into the men row. The next piece of information we can use from the question is the fact that 8 of the men do not like coffee. So the place we're going to want to look on this frequency tree is first the men row and then the do not like coffee row. So out of the 32 men, 8 of these do not like coffee. So we can fill this into the do not like coffee row. And if there are 32 men in total, and 8 of these people do not like coffee, then this means the number of men who like coffee is 32 minus 8, which is 24. So the next piece of information we can use from the question is that 61 out of 80 people like coffee. So we worked out that 24 of the men like coffee. So this means the number of women who like coffee is 61 minus 24, which gives us an answer of 37. So now the final row we need to complete for this frequency tree is the number of women who do not like coffee. So if there are 48 women in total, and 37 of these like coffee, then this means the number of women who do not like coffee is 48 minus 37. Which gives us 11. So we can fill this into the women who do not like coffee. And if we want to check that our answer is correct, we can add together each of these columns and they should all add up to 80. Now this question's worth 3 marks and we'll get all 3 marks for correctly completing the frequency tree. One of the people who like coffee is chosen at random. Find the probability that this person is a woman. So the probability that this person is a woman is the number of women who like coffee divided by the total number of people who like coffee. So the first thing we'll want to do for this question is work out the number of women who like coffee. And to do this we'll need to look at the frequency tree from part A of our question. So we're looking for women who like coffee. And the number of women who like coffee is 37. Now next we're going to need to know the number of people who like coffee. And we were told in part A of this question that 61 out of the 80 people like coffee. So therefore the number of people who like coffee in total is 61. And this is our final probability. And this question's worth 2 marks, and we'll get 1 mark for getting the correct numerator, and 1 mark for the correct denominator. Food Mart and Jan's store sell boxes of the same type of breakfast cereal. Each shop has a special offer. Food Mart, 400 grams, 20% off the normal price of £5. Jan's store, 400 grams, plus 30% extra for £5. Which box of cereal is better value for money? You must show your working. So what we're going to want to do for this question is first work out the weight in each of these cereal boxes and then work out the price that they're charging. So if we start off with Food Mart, Food Mart sells 400 gram boxes for 20% off the normal price of £5. So we're going to want to work out 20% of £5. So if £5 is 100% of the price, and we want to work out 20%, then in order to get from 100 to 20, we would divide by 5. So we can do the same to the price. And £5 divided by 5 is £1. So therefore 20% of £5 is £1. However, this cereal is 20% off the normal price of £5. So therefore 20% off £5 is 5 minus £1, which gives us £4. So therefore, for Food Mart, 400 grams of breakfast cereal costs £4. Now we can work out the price for Jan's store. So we've been told that Jan's store has 400 gram boxes plus 30% extra for the price of £5. And we can use the same process as before. If 400 grams is 100% of the weight, then we can first work out what 10% is, and then multiply this by 3 to give us 30%. So in order to get from 100 to 10, we'll divide by 10. And we can do the same for the weight. So 400 divided by 10 gives us 40 grams. And then to get from 10 to 30, we multiply by 3. So again we can do the same to the weight, which gives us 120 grams. And now we'll need to add this 30% onto the 400 grams to work out the total weight of the cereal. And 400 plus 120 gives us 520 grams. So therefore 520 grams costs £5. Now for this question we want to show which cereal box is better value for money. So we're going to want to compare these two values. And to do this, we can either work out the cost for a certain number of grams, or work out how many grams we can buy for a certain price. So for this question we can work out how many grams a certain price will cost. So we can compare how many grams £1 will buy us. So we'll start off with Food Mart, and in order to work out how many grams £1 will buy us, we'll want to divide both of these numbers by 4. And this tells us that 100 grams costs £1. And we can use the same process for Jan's store. However, in order to work out how many grams £1 will buy us, we'll need to divide both of these numbers by 5. So 520 grams divided by 5. This calculation can be difficult to do in one go. So in order to make it easier, we can first work out 500 divided by 5, and then work out 20 divided by 5, and then add together these two values. And this gives us 104 grams. And then £5 divided by 5 gives us £1. So now what we've worked out is how many grams of breakfast cereal we can buy for £1. And what we can see is for Food Mart, 100 grams will cost us £1. However, in Jan's store, 104 grams will cost us £1. So therefore, Jan's store is better value for money. So now the final thing we'll need to do for this question is write a summary statement. So we can write something along the lines of Jan's store because 104 grams costs £1. Now this question's worth 4 marks. We'll get our first mark for reducing £5 by 20%. We'll get our second mark for increasing 400 grams by 30%. We'll get our third mark for finding either 2 weights or 2 costs which we can compare. And we'll get our fourth mark for stating that Jan's store is better value for money, along with the supporting evidence. Rotate shape A 180 degrees about 1, 0. So the first thing we'll need to do for this question is find the point 1, 0. And the way coordinates work is the first value is the x coordinate and the second value is the y coordinate. So we're going to want to go 1 along the x-axis and then 0 up the y-axis. So this is the point we want to rotate shape A around. So now in order to rotate this shape, we can use tracing paper. So we can place the tracing paper on this coordinate grid, and then we can draw over this shape. Now if we draw an arrow pointing upwards, and then place our pencil on the point 1, 0, then if we rotate this tracing paper 180 degrees, so that the arrow is pointing downwards, then this will give us shape A after it has been rotated 180 degrees. So we can plot these coordinates. And if we plot the 4 vertices of this shape, they should have the coordinates 4, -3, 5, -4, 5, -5 and 4, -5. So now the final thing we need to do is use a ruler to join up these coordinates. And this is what our final shape should look like. And this question's worth 2 marks, and we'll get both marks for drawing the correct shape with the correct coordinates. Work out the value of 3 to the power of 7 multiplied by 3 to the power of -2 divided by 3 to the power of 3. Now this may look complicated at first, but we can use the laws of indices to simplify this down. So there's 2 rules we'll need to know, and these are that a to the power of x multiplied by a to the power of y is equal to a to the power of x plus y, and then a to the power of x divided by a to the power of y is equal to a to the power of x minus y. So we can start off by simplifying down the numerator of this fraction. So 3 to the power of 7 multiplied by 3 to the power of -2. If we use our rules of indices, then this means it will be equal to 3 to the power of 7 minus 2. And then this is all divided by 3 to the power of 3. And 7 minus 2 is 5. So this is equal to 3 to the power of 5 divided by 3 to the power of 3. And now we can use our second rule of indices. And this gives us that 3 to the power of 5 divided by 3 to the power of 3 will be equal to 3 to the power of 5 minus 3. And 5 minus 3 is 2. So this is equal to 3 to the power of 2. And 3 to the power of 2 is equal to 9. And this is our final answer. Now this question's worth 2 marks. We'll get our first mark for using our rules of indices to begin to simplify down this fraction. And we'll get our second mark for the correct answer. V squared equals u squared plus 2as. U equals 12, a equals -3, s equals 18. Work out the value of v. So what we're going to need to do for this question is substitute in the values of u, a and s in order to give us a value for v squared, and then we can square root our answer to give us the value of v. So v squared is equal to u squared, and if our value for u is 12, then u squared will be equal to 12 squared. And 2as will be equal to 2 multiplied by -3 multiplied by 18. So now what we need to do is simplify this down. So 12 squared is 144, and -3 multiplied by 18 is -54. 2 multiplied by -54 gives us -108. And then 144 minus 108 gives us 36. So now we've worked out the value of v squared, but we need to work out the value of v. So what we're going to want to do is square root both sides of this equation. And the square root of v squared is v. And then the square root of 36 is plus or minus 6. And this plus or minus is easy to forget. So plus or minus 6 is our final answer. Now this question's worth 2 marks. We'll get our first mark for substituting in the values of u, a and s into the equation. And we'll get our second mark for the correct answer. Make s the subject of v squared equals u squared plus 2as. So in order to make s the subject of this equation, we're going to want to get s on its own on one side. So the first thing we can do is minus u squared from both sides of this equation. And this gives us that v squared minus u squared is equal to 2as. And now the final thing we can do to make s the subject is divide both sides by 2a. And this gives us that v squared minus u squared divided by 2a is equal to s. And this is our final answer. Now this question's worth 2 marks. We'll get our first mark for minusing u squared from both sides of this equation, and we'll get our second mark for completing the method in order to get the correct final answer. A bonus of 2,100 is shared by 10 people who work for a company. 40% of the bonus is shared equally between 3 managers. The rest of the bonus is shared equally between 7 salesmen. One of the salesmen says, if the bonus is shared equally between all 10 people, I will get 25% more money. Is the salesman correct? You must show how you get your answer. So for this question, we're going to need to work out the amount of money each of the salesmen will get, and then compare this to the amount of money which each salesman will get if the bonus was shared equally. So the first thing we can do is work out the percentage of the bonus which will be shared between the 7 salesmen. So if £2,100 is 100% of the bonus, and the managers will take 40%, then this means the amount which is shared between the salesmen is 60%. So we want to work out how much 60% of £2,100 is. And we can do this by adding 50% to 10%. So 50% of £2,100 is equal to half of £2,100, which is £1,050. And then 10% of £2,100 will be the same as dividing £2,100 by 10, which gives us £210. So if we add these together, this tells us that 60% is equal to £1,260. Now £1,260 is the amount of money which 7 salesmen will share. So in order to work out how much each salesman will earn, we'll need to divide this value by 7. So we can use the bus stop method. So 7 goes into 1 0 times. So we can add a 0 above and then carry over the 1. 7 goes into 12 once, and then we have a remainder of 5, so again we can carry this over. 7 goes into 56 8 times, and then there's no remainders, and then 7 goes into 0 0 times. So the amount of money each salesman will earn will be £180. So the next thing we'll need to do is work out how much money each of the salesmen will get if the bonus is shared equally between all 10 people. So if the bonus was originally £2,100 and the bonus is being shared equally between all 10 people, then we'll want to divide 2,100 by 10. And this gives us £210. Now we want to work out whether 210 is 25% more than 180. So in order to do this, we can work out 125% of 180. So 125% of this value will be equal to 100% plus 25%. So 100% of the price will be £180. And then 25% of the price is the same as dividing 180 by 4, which gives us £45. And if we add these together, this gives us £225. So therefore, 25% more than 180 is £225. Meaning because the amount of money they would get if they split the money evenly would be £210, and 25% more than 180 is £225, then each salesman would get less than 25% extra bonus. So therefore, each salesman would not get 25% extra if their bonus was split evenly between all 10 people. So now the final thing we need to do is write a summary statement. So we can write something along the lines of, no, because when split evenly, each salesman will get £210. However, 25% extra from £180 is £225. Now this question's worth 5 marks. We'll get 1 mark for working out that 60% of the bonus will be shared out between the salesmen. We'll get our 2nd mark for working out 60% of the bonus. We'll get our 3rd mark for working out how much money each of the salesmen will get under the first scheme. We'll get our 4th mark for showing how much money each salesman will get on the second scheme. And we'll get our 5th mark for a final summary statement, stating that no, they will not get an extra 25%, along with the supporting evidence. It would take 120 minutes to fill a swimming pool using water from 5 taps. How many minutes will it take to fill the pool if only 3 taps are used? So for this question, we're going to want to work out how many minutes it would take to fill the swimming pool using just 1 tap, and then we can divide this value by 3 to work out how many minutes it will take to fill the pool if only 3 of the taps are used. So if it takes 120 minutes to fill the swimming pool using water from 5 taps, then it would take longer to fill the swimming pool using just 1 tap. So in order to work out how long it will take for 1 tap, we want to multiply 120 by 5, which gives us 600 minutes. So therefore 1 tap will take 600 minutes to fill the swimming pool. So now to work out how many minutes it will take to fill the pool if only 3 taps are used, we're going to want to divide 600 by 3. And this gives us 200 minutes. And this is because if it takes 600 minutes to fill the pool using 1 tap, then using 3 taps it will only take 1/3 of the time. So therefore 200 minutes is our final answer. Now this question's worth 2 marks. We'll get our 1st mark for working out how long it will take to fill the pool using 1 tap, and then dividing this value by 3. And then we'll get our 2nd mark for the correct answer. State one assumption you made in working out your answer to part A. So in part A, we worked out that 1 tap would take 600 minutes to fill up the pool. So this is assuming that all of the taps would take 600 minutes. However, some taps may have a higher water flow than other taps. So therefore, the assumption we made was that each tap filled up the swimming pool at the same rate. So we can write something along the lines of each tap will fill up the pool at the same rate. And this question's worth 1 mark, and this is for a suitable assumption relating to the amount of water flowing out of each tap. A plane travels at a speed of 213 miles per hour. Work out an estimate for the number of seconds the plane takes to travel 1 mile. So the first thing we want to do for this question is, because we only want to work out an estimate for the number of seconds, then we want to round this 213 miles per hour down to 1 significant figure. And 213 can round down to 200. And this is the value we can use to work out an estimate. So if this plane travels at 200 miles per hour, then this means that the plane will travel 200 miles in 60 minutes. And because we want our answer in seconds, and there are 60 seconds per minute, then this means that this plane will travel 200 miles in 3,600 seconds. So using this information, we can now work out the amount of time it will take to travel 1 mile. So in order to get from 200 miles to 1 mile, we'll need to divide by 200. So we can do the same calculation with the number of seconds. So 3,600 seconds divided by 200 gives us an answer of 18 seconds. And this is our final answer. Now this question's worth 3 marks. We'll get our first mark for converting 1 hour into seconds. We'll get our second mark for dividing this value by 200 to work out how long it will take for the plane to travel 1 mile. And our third mark for the correct answer. Is your answer to part A an underestimate or an overestimate? Give a reason for your answer. So if we take a look at part A of this question, the plane's actual speed was 213 miles per hour. However, we rounded this down to 200 miles per hour. So if instead of dividing 3,600 seconds by 200, we actually divided it by 213, this would give us a smaller number of seconds. So therefore, our answer to part A is an overestimate, because we rounded the speed down. So for our answer, we can write something along the lines of, our answer was an overestimate because we rounded the speed down. And this question's worth 1 mark, and we'll get this for a suitable decision along with valid reasoning. Solve the simultaneous equations 5x plus y equals 21, x minus 3y equals 9. So in order to solve these two equations, we'll need to make one of these coefficients the same, and then add these two equations together to eliminate one of the algebraic terms. So if we label these equation 1 and equation 2, in equation 2 we have a negative 3y, and in equation 1 we have a y. So what we can do is multiply equation 1 by 3, so that we can then add these two equations together. So if we multiply both sides of this equation by 3, 5x multiplied by 3 is 15x, y multiplied by 3 will give us 3y, and then 21 multiplied by 3 will give us 63. And we can label this equation 3. So now what we can do is add equation 2 to equation 3. So x add 15x will give us 16x. Negative 3y add 3y will give us 0. And then 63 add 9 gives us 72. So this therefore tells us that 16x is equal to 72. So now in order to work out the value of x, we'll want to get the x term on its own on one side of this equation. So the first thing we can do is divide both sides of this equation by 8. And this tells us that 2x is equal to 9. And then finally we can divide both sides of this equation by 2. And this tells us that x is equal to 4.5. So we can write this into the answer box. So now the final thing we need to do for this question is substitute this value of x into one of the original equations to work out the value of y. So using equation 2, x minus 3y equals 9, and when x is equal to 4.5, then this means that 4.5 minus 3y is equal to 9. So as we did with the x term, we're going to want to rearrange this equation so that we have y on its own on one side of the equation. So first we can add 3y to both sides of this equation. And this gives us 4.5 is equal to 9 plus 3y. Next we can minus 9 from both sides of this equation, which gives us negative 4.5 is equal to 3y. And now the final thing we can do is divide both sides by 3. And this tells us that negative 1.5 is equal to y. So we can write this into our answer box. And these are our final answers. Now this question's worth 3 marks. We'll get our first mark for eliminating one of the variables. We'll get our second mark for substituting the value of x into one of the original equations. And we'll get our third mark for having both the x and the y terms correct. The diagram shows a square ABCD with sides of length 20 centimetres. It also shows a semicircle and an arc of a circle. AB is the diameter of the semicircle. AC is an arc of a circle with centre B. Show that the area of the shaded region divided by the area of the square is equal to pi divided by 8. So for this question, the first thing we'll need to do is work out the area of this shaded region here. Now to do this we can work out the full area of this quarter circle ACB and then minus the area of this semicircle from the full area. So the formula for the area of a circle is pi r squared. So this means that the formula for a quarter of a circle will be pi r squared divided by 4. So because ABCD is a square, then this means that all of the side lengths will be the same. So length BC will also be 20 centimetres. And this means that the radius of this quarter circle is 20 centimetres. So we can substitute this value into the area of a circle. So the area of ACB will be equal to pi multiplied by the radius, which is 20, squared. And then because this is a quarter circle, we can divide this all by 4. So the first thing we'll need to do to simplify this down is square the 20. And 20 squared is equal to 400. And then the final thing we'll need to do is simplify down this fraction. And pi multiplied by 400 divided by 4 will give us 100 pi. Now the next thing we'll need to do is work out the area of this semicircle here. Now the area of a semicircle will be equal to the area of a circle divided by 2, because a semicircle is half of a circle. Now an important thing to remember is we need to use the radius to work out the area of a circle. However, 20 centimetres is the full diameter of this semicircle. So the radius will be equal to a half of this length, which will be 10 centimetres. So now we need to substitute 10 centimetres into the area of this circle. And this gives us pi multiplied by 10 squared. And because it is a semicircle, we'll want to divide this by 2. Next we'll need to simplify this down. So as before, we'll first square the 10, which gives us pi multiplied by 100, all divided by 2. And then pi multiplied by 100 divided by 2 will give us 50 pi. So now if we look back at the diagram, we've worked out the full area of this quarter circle, and we've worked out the area of this semicircle. So the area of the shaded region will be 100 pi minus 50 pi. And 100 pi minus 50 pi is equal to 50 pi. So now the final thing we need to do, in order to show that the area of the shaded region divided by the area of the square is pi over 8, we'll need to work out the area of the square. So the area of a square is equal to base multiplied by height. And if we look at our square, this will be equal to 20 multiplied by 20. So this means the area of the square will be equal to 20 multiplied by 20, which gives us 400. So now the final thing we need to do is substitute in these two values into this fraction which we've been told to prove in order to show it's equal to pi divided by 8. So the area of the shaded region divided by the area of the square will be equal to 50 pi divided by 400. And if we simplify this down, we can first divide both the numerator and the denominator by 10, which gives us 5 pi over 40. And then we can divide both the numerator and the denominator by 5, which gives us pi over 8. So as we can see, we've shown that the area of the shaded region divided by the area of the square is equal to pi divided by 8. Now this question's worth 4 marks. We'll get our first mark for working out the area of the quarter circle. We'll get our second mark for working out the area of the semicircle. We'll get our third mark for working out the area of the shaded region and the area of the square. And we'll get our fourth mark for a full complete proof. Amina has 2 bags. In the first bag there are 3 red balls and 7 green balls. In the second bag there are 5 red balls and 4 green balls. Amina takes at random a ball from the first bag. She then takes at random a ball from the second bag. Complete the probability tree diagram. So the first thing we can do is highlight all the key information from the question. So in the first bag there are 3 red balls and 7 green balls. And then in the second bag there are 5 red balls and 4 green balls. So what this means is in the first bag there are 10 balls, and then in the second bag there are 9 balls. So now we can use this to complete the probability tree diagram. So if we start off with the first bag, the probability of choosing a red ball has already been filled in, so we just need to fill in the green ball. So if there are 7 green balls in the first bag, and there are 10 balls in total, then the probability of choosing out a green ball from the first bag will be 7 divided by 10. So now we can move on to the second bag. So in the second bag there are 9 balls in total, and the probability of choosing a red ball has already been filled in. So as before, we only need to fill in the probability of choosing a green ball. And we can use the same process as the first bag. So if there are 9 balls in the second bag, and 4 out of 9 of these balls are green, then the probability of choosing out a green ball will be 4 divided by 9. And because the probability of the second bag does not depend on the first bag, this means that the probability of the second bag for this part of the tree diagram will be exactly the same as this part. So therefore, the probability of choosing out a red ball from the second bag will be 5 over 9, and then the probability for choosing a green ball will be 4 over 9. And this question's worth 2 marks, and we'll get both marks for correctly filling in this probability tree diagram. Work out the probability that Amina takes 2 red balls. So we're going to need to use this probability tree diagram from part A. So if Amina takes 2 red balls, she'll need to take a red ball from the first bag and also a red ball from the second bag. So the probability of choosing a red ball from the first bag is 3 over 10. And then the probability of choosing a red ball from the second bag is 5 over 9. And because we're working out the probability that Amina takes a red ball from the first bag and takes a red ball from the second bag, we're going to want to multiply these fractions together. And when multiplying fractions, we'll first multiply the numerators together, and then we'll multiply the denominators together. So 3 multiplied by 5 gives us 15, and then 10 multiplied by 9 gives us 90. And because this is probability, we don't need to simplify down this fraction. So the final answer is 15 divided by 90. Now this question's worth 2 marks. We'll get our first mark for multiplying together these two fractions, and we'll get our second mark for the correct answer. The size of each interior angle of a regular polygon is 11 times the size of each exterior angle. Work out how many sides the polygon has. So the first thing we can do for this question is highlight all of the key pieces of information in the question. So each interior angle is 11 times the size of each exterior angle. So what we can do is we can let x be equal to the exterior angle. And because each interior angle is 11 times the size of each exterior angle, this means each interior angle will be equal to 11x. Now if we draw a diagram which is zoomed in on 2 side lengths of the regular polygon, then this interior angle here would be equal to 11x. And because the exterior angle is measured from this dotted line here, this makes this angle here the exterior angle, and we can label this up as x. So now because this dotted line and side length add up to 180 degrees, then this means that the exterior angle and the interior angle will add up to 180 degrees. And therefore x plus 11x equals 180. So therefore 12x equals 180. And if we divide both sides of this equation by 12, this tells us that x is equal to 15 degrees. And so therefore each exterior angle is equal to 15 degrees. So now the next rule we'll need to know is that all exterior angles on a regular polygon add up to 360 degrees. And if this is the case, then if we divide the size of the exterior angle by 360 degrees, this will tell us how many vertices and therefore how many sides the polygon has. And 360 divided by 15 gives us an answer of 24. So therefore this regular polygon has 24 sides. Now this question's worth 3 marks. We'll get our first mark for showing that we understand that the exterior angle add the interior angle is equal to 180 degrees. We'll get our second mark for dividing the size of our exterior angle by 360 degrees. And we'll get our third mark for the correct answer.